As I prefaced the previous one, obviously, there's a horn on my coffee. It's no harder act to follow to some degree than season one of True Detective. It's sort of one of those pieces where someone's whole life, I think the guy was in his late 30s or around 40 when he did it, has come toward that point where you break through from being nobody to being somebody. So there's like an obviously like an inventive electric energy to someone's first work a lot of times. And so the first season of it, to me, kind of seems like the first season of Mad Men, or even rather more specifically, the pilot of Mad Men, where the person's like, whoa, and then everyone's like, whoa, and then the person's like, well, how do I follow that up? And then you just try to kind of do your best. And so the first season was so electric that I never really was that motivated to watch the second and third ones. But now that I have, I just finished the third one a night or two ago. Um, as I've noted before, all three have an extraordinarily, or the previous two, but all three of them have an extraordinarily different structure to them. All three of them have a very complex structure. The first one being present to past to present to future, essentially in how the story goes through, and in like quite an epic tale in some ways. The second one being an extraordinarily complex amount of different interwoven stories, and then so incongruous from the theme of the first one that you're kind of wondering why the departure is the way that it is. Although in a lot of ways, as I said before, it's sort of like a homage to Chinatown and the old detectives novels. This one, having watched it, I'm not surprised that season three was the last season that the creator did. And in a lot of ways, it is not necessarily a rejection of your standard structure of a crime story, but it is more like a focus on the other side of it. Mahershala Ali, I think, is extremely good in this. I think he is especially very good at seeming different at different age. It's kind of hard to tell the 1980 versus 1990 version that much, but him as an old man, the drooped head, the sort of quiet confusion, the really, really bright eyes wondering, he does an exceptional job as the old man. And the story of this one is, while sometimes a little bit too arch in the first episode or two and how it switches between them, by the end of it, they're using reflections and mirror images to constantly transition between the three stories in what is like a honestly like an exceptionally crafted narrative. He's changing so often as the three stories converge and you get to sort of what you hope will be your satisfying ending. There is so much intertwining between them, and he switches so often around them. But essentially, um, what the show seems to me to be about is that if every single crime thriller, like your Zodiac, your Seven, but more so like your Zodiac, your earlier seasons of True Detective, this almost in some ways like a goodbye, or almost at some level this is too negative, but almost sort of like a rejection of this kind of crime thriller story, where while everyone has lost their lives obsessing over this story, of which they get a moderately satisfactory answer and amount of closure to, basically if you look at what's really focused on in the past couple episodes, basically it's talking about how whole lives have gone by. And it's a little sentimental, but like whole lives have gone by. And with all his obsession over the crime thriller, he's sort of glanced over the fact that he has a love story in his own life and had a family and what was tumultuous but often was like essentially a very beautiful love story. It's very significant to me, I think, that the last two scenes of the show are a scene where him and his wife made up before they got married. Him and his girlfriend made up before they then got married. And then the very, very final scene of the entire season, is him for the only time shown in Vietnam when he was in Vietnam. And he kind of looks around and he turns back and then he walks out into the woods. And to me, I sort of take that as like he never really truly came out of that jungle, which is a very, I think, common occurrence for people who were Vietnam vets. And so I think that's where like the obsession, the haunted sort of cursed view and how much he focused on things, even as an old man, he forgot everything that was important and only thought about the story and was trying to put things together. It's like that last instinct. So him and Stephen Dorff have like their last hurrah, and they have an oddly sentimental sort of friendly attachment near the end, which is like a little confusing. How much Stephen Dorff is like, all right, buddy, I'll see you tomorrow, and they're like hugging and a little teary-eyed. Like I guess that is kind of like the sentimentality of older men. I have noticed that as an aside that like how much how much more softness there is in a lot of men who are in their 50s. Like if I'm walking down a path and I pass by someone who's like my age or younger or a little bit older, like there's sort of like a who's going to break first, who's going to be nice. If you're nice, you're kind of soft, you know what I mean? But you see someone who's like 20 years older than you, 25 years older, you're like, "Hi, how you doing?" Like they're sort of relieved to have a soft moment. Or like I remember having my cat in a cat carrier. I was taking her to the vet, and a guy who was like 55 was like, "Oh my God, look at her!" And I was like, "Wow, that is like a level of gentleness that I couldn't possibly conceive at that point." You know what I mean? So there is sort of like a softening, which sometimes comes with like a ramping in anxiety. Uh, you can see that at the gym and other places. It's a total aside, but you can see that at the gym and other places that the guys who are like above 55 to 70, they're a little brittle around everyone else because they know the sort of like vitality and strength gap to all these like younger guys who are more chill, and they're a lot more weird about like locker space and rules and privileges and rights and all these things. Where like you in that environment you can see like the uptightness. But anyway, yeah, they have a sort of like an oddly sentimental ending, and it is a little bit sappy the way the story ends in terms of it be like, it's really about love all along. It's not about these crime thrillers. But I think it's to some degree him walking away from these stories. But essentially what I do want to say is while magic did strike in an extraordinary way with that first season, where just how heartfelt it is, how hallucinatory, it's heartfelt in a different way. It's like your heart, like he was like throbbing, man. Like those scenes were like Matthew McConaughey is in the wheelchair near the end where they have those final discussions out in the hospital parking lot. That is like, there's nothing like that. There's really, really nothing like that. It's very, very rare that a show shines like it does then in near the ending of True Detective. But I will say that all 3 seasons of these are exceptionally well crafted, totally different. This guy is clearly technically extremely skilled because every single one of them has an entirely different shape and structure and is done so well. And they're a huge step above almost everything else at a technical level that you see and are quite good. But I also understand while I could use more, I think this 3 seasons sort of exhausts the genre, and I understand that he's gone on to like he's got a Vince Vaughn film coming out, etc. But I will say, no matter how different they are, all 3 of these are exceptionally well made at a higher level than nearly anything else that I've seen as like a mature adult crime story. So I'm glad I caught up. I didn't necessarily need to see it before, but I'm glad I caught up now. All right, bye.